Hey guys, I'm here with another book talk. Finally wrapping up this series I have been reading for the past 2 months, 3, 4, I don't know, forever it feels like. And this book is The Kill Order by James Dashner. This is the prequel to the Maze Runner series. This takes place 13 years prior to the Maze Runner, and yeah, it's, oh my gosh, I freaking love it. Like, it is definitely my favorite book in the entire series, and I'm not really quite sure why. I think part of it's because, like, after reading the Maze Runner series and then reading this, like, it's nice to have all that background information and to understand how people got where they were supposed to be and, like, what exactly happened, like, when the flares hit and, like, after that, and, like, how people dealt with stuff. I don't know. I just really liked it, and I also really like this cover. I don't know why. I'm not really a big fan of, like, oranges or yellows, but I really like this cover. Maybe it's because it's so shiny. I'm just attracted to like really, really shiny metallic things, and I think that's why. I really liked it because the book, even though it takes place 13 years before the Maze Runner, the sun flares hit 14 years prior to that. This book is set a year after the sun flares actually devastated Earth and all this stuff. Mark still has nightmares about what happened when the flares hit and everything, and how they survived. And so it's nice to see, like, what exactly happened right when the flares hit. Of course, the entire Earth was completely scorched, but also that set off a tsunami that later flooded, like, New York and below sea level areas. So I liked seeing that and seeing what happened, how people reacted, and people are insane in situations like this where they don't know what's happening. And oh my gosh, it's terrifying. Like, I don't know if I could live through an ordeal like that. And especially, like, half the crap they went through. Like, if I were in the subway area like they were when it hit, yeah, I'd probably be alive, but I would probably freak out because I am kind of claustrophobic and I'm kind of terrified of the dark in places I don't know where I am. And plus, subways are dirty, and I'm not that big on germs in public transportation. So, yeah, that'd be a very, very horrifying nightmare for me. Speaking of Mark, I really enjoyed him and Trina's relationship. It wasn't so freaking, like, making me want to shoot myself in the face because it was insta-love. They developed this relationship because they had been through this horrendous ordeal over the past year, and they just grew close from that. And I just loved it, and they were really cute, and it really did break my heart when Trina lost her memory and she didn't know who he was. And I was like, that's sad. But it's also, like, they weren't all over each other, and it didn't make me want to vomit. Like, it was a nice, cute, sweet little relationship, even though, you know, they die in the end because they both have the flare. And the very ending, after they put Dee Dee through the flat trans and she turns to him, she says his name, and she starts kissing him, I was like, there you go. That's sad. But then, you know, now we don't know what happens to the rest of them. Well, obviously we do, because they all have the flares, so they all go crazy and die eventually. I just want to stay out there that I love Mark. I really do. But he seems like he doesn't use a lot of common sense half the time, and especially when him and Alec found the Transverses that are freaking amazing. These things are giant disintegrating grays, basically. Like, you get struck with it and you turn gray, and then you turn into little ash molecules in the air, and it is so cool. And I wish I had one because there are so many people I would like to zap with it. There would be no evidence that it happened, and that'd be great. This is a very, very dangerous high-tech weapon that should probably not be out of government hands. And, you know, so they learn how to use them. And freaking Mark, after Alec has already told him, don't let them get it out of your hands, what does he do? He gets distracted, and he gets it taken away from him, and he's like, oh crap, now we got somebody loose with this. Then they get back on the berg later, and he grabs the extra one, and he's hunting down this guy in the ceiling, and what does he do? He comes down, and he freaking steals it out of his hands again. This is the second time in one day. I was like, we should not give you high technical weapons that can destroy somebody on contact. Like, it kills you instantly, basically. We shouldn't give you weapons like this. Like, we should just, you know, stick with a knife. Stick with a knife. It's easier that way. Or like a gun. We shouldn't give you weapons because you'll get them taken away, and then, you know, nothing good ever comes out of that, because you don't want to give freaking crazy people weapons that can disintegrate people. It's not a pretty picture. In the Scorch trials, the boys are told about the flare and that it was a very, very dangerous disease that was accidentally released. Well, we find out in this book it wasn't accidentally released. Like, government officials signed off on and okayed it for people to go out in their suits and everything and go shoot darts full of this virus to kill half the population so that we could actually sustain life without all starving because we've used up the rest of our resources that we have. And it is crazy. And originally, the virus is supposed to kill within a few hours of being infected with it. It's transmitted through bodily fluids as well as it's airborne. If the environment circumstances are right, it's airborne. And one thing they didn't seem to think about with this is that a virus can mutate. And it did mutate, and then it started killing people, but it took longer and longer, and you know, they were no longer dying like a painless death anymore. It was drawn out, and it eats at your brain, and then you die, and you just go crazy, and you're basically no longer human. You're just like an animal in like a human shell. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's terrifying, and it's sad. And then the fact that they released this disease that kills people in like the most horrendous way once it's mutated, and they didn't even think to come up with a cure before they released it. Like, why didn't you think about that? Because now you have people dying. Like, even important officials can catch it and they can die, but I would think you would have the cure so that way you could treat your people and the important people that you need to keep alive. Like, you should have thought of coming up with a cure before you released a giant disease that is now going to wipe out almost all of the human population except for the very, very few people that are immune. The very end of this book, Mark and Trina send Dee Dee through the flat trans, and we don't exactly know who this girl is. We just know they found her in this village after it had been attacked 2 months earlier, and she had been hit by a dart, but she's still alive and she's not showing any signs of going crazy because she happens to be immune. Now, at the end of the book, we don't actually find out who Dee Dee is. We just know that she's immune and she goes through. But if you go past the acknowledgments, there's another little section and it goes over Teresa. And Teresa so happens to be Dee Dee. So this entire book is the story of how Teresa came to be in the hands of Wicked. And I freaking loved it. And now it makes me even sadder because, you know, we saw her when she was like, what, 5? Was she like 5? Twin age was like 5 or 7 in this book. And we get to kind of see her and understand maybe why she's kind of the way she is in The Maze Runner. And then she goes through such character development throughout the series. And then she gets crushed by the fucking ceiling. Why would you do this to me? And it makes me sad because to think she survived all of this that she went through to get to where she was in the hands of Wicked, and then she survived the maze and she survived everything they went through until the very end of the death cure, and she just, you know, she was crushed. And I feel so bad because, you know, she basically had lived in living hell, and next thing you know, she lived through all of this, and she just, why would you do this to me? Why? Also, we had known previously that Thomas was taken away from his mother because they tested him and they found him immune and the government took him away. And that very last little extra section in the end of the book shows us how Thomas and Teresa meet, and I just loved it. I loved it. And it was nice to see that, you know, Teresa had been there 2 years prior to Thomas being taken, and she was so alone. And it was sad, and they kept her in this like little shoebox room, and they moved them together, and now she has a friend. They set up the approximate age they are, and then you find out they've been together for all these years. They've been best friends and maybe lovers, I'm not quite sure. It's sad to think that like their friendship ended the way it did without him fully accepting her apology, and it's sad. I've also heard rumors that I saw through Wikipedia, which I'm not sure if I'm supposed to believe, but supposedly James Dashner is writing a sequel to this book called The Fever Code that's supposed to come out sometime this year. And I really, really, really hope it's true, because I need to know what happens next. And obviously the Fever Code isn't going to be about how Thomas was brought to Wicked, because we already know he was just taken from his mother and they brought him there. But I'm thinking maybe the Fever Code, if it possibly is an actual book that will be coming out, and I will definitely buy it, is going to be after they're a little older, and once the original creators of Wicked, I guess, start getting sick and dying off, and like all the craziness that goes through and how they took over. I'm really wanting to see how that happened, and how, I don't know, I want to. Like, I want to know what happens next. Like, now that they're both in the hands of Wicked, I want to see what happened after that, and how they got to, you know, eventually be the actual creators and running the maze, and then why they had to send themselves in, and like, why didn't they try to stop this and think of a different way to try and find a cure besides sending all these children and wiping their memories and sending them into a maze to live for several years and be stuck, and then later just, I gotta know what happens next. Alright, well, that is it for this book talk. Yeah, I can't function today. I will see you guys next time with a Top 5 Wednesday tag video or a book talk. Until then, I'm Chrissy. Goodbye!